And welcome to another show of Don't Get This Twisted. I am Rob, along with my co-host, as always, Tina. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm having a really good day today.
Well, having a good day is a positive.
Yes.
Because I'm having I didn't have a bad day. I just had a heavy workload day. It was busy at work. So I was like, holy crap, man. So, and I'm tired. But we have a very cool thing we're going to talk about, something that we are both, since we're the same age, we're going to talk about growing up in the 80s.
Yay.
Because I think most of our like real years were in the 80s. Like, I mean,
our high
obviously
school years were definitely in the 80s. Our junior high school years were as well.
Yeah, from teenage on is, to 1990 would be our teenage years, and all of our high school. So, yeah. I mean, matter of fact, I think I turned 18 in 89. So that would be that. So I was definitely part of that. And, I mostly looking back on like 80s movies or things that they talk about, like when you see a TV show now that shows the 80s, sometimes I'm just like, that is total bullshit. Like that wasn't like,
it's funny that you say that, because I was watching 16 Candles, and the stuff that in the beginning, when they had forgotten Samantha's birthday, all the racist stuff they had said that just that wouldn't be allowed today. That wouldn't be allowed today. No. And we were laughing our asses off. I had a really good day the other day. We sat there and watched crappy movies and got high and laughed our heads off. But it was all things, we were laughing at things that wouldn't fly in today's society, and all their racist comments and things about being gay. And it was an innocent movie, but it definitely wouldn't fly today.
Well, it's funny too, because like so many people shit on those movies now because they're just like, they're horrible and they're this and they're that. The director of Airplane did an interview, and he goes, yeah, we could make Airplane today if you didn't put any jokes in it.
Right.
and I was like, touche, mister. Like, It's totally true. You couldn't, because people are soft and brittle, and they hear something that's just like, and it ends them. It's like, for God's sakes.
Well, I think we were the last generation that we actually had to work for what we got. We were also like the last generation to be spanked. So we're definitely raised differently than the kids of today are, for sure.
Yeah, I also think that we grew up with comedy, and people understood it. Like there are no comedy movies now.
Do you remember when Eddie Murphy Raw came out? We had to go and get a VHS from the rental store, bring it home. We were all going to watch it on a Friday night, and my grandparents showed up in the middle of it. And if you haven't seen Raw with Eddie Murphy, for the time, I don't know what it's like now. It's been so long since I've seen it, but it was really vulgar. And
it's amazing.
We were pissed that we had to turn it off because my grandparents were there. But I think if they were alive now and the stuff they were seeing on basic cable, it's not, if you think about it, it's not that much worse. Or for those times, those guidelines for those times.
I mean, you should rewatch it. I believe it's on Netflix. I think it's on Netflix. If you haven't seen it in a while, look, I get it. He says a lot of horrible shit, but that doesn't make it any less funny. And I think that, and again, I just think growing up in the 80s, we had tons of funny movies that made fun of all kinds of shit. Like we had Porky's, which was about sticking your dick in a hole. Like literally, that was like, guys who would go to the showers to look at the girls. And if you did that today, oh man, the uproar.
Right. And the Cheech and Chong movies. Like,
those were so good.
We grew up with those. and Benny Hill.
And it's funny too, because we got the watered down version of Benny Hill.
Oh yeah, totally.
The British version had nudity. Mm-hmm. So it was a whole, we got the chopped up version of Benny Hill, which was still funny.
I think my brother at about 7, that was like his favorite show he'd watch.
Yeah, we'll go
Benny
figure.
Hill chase the women that were barely dressed around.
Yeah, there was lots of cleavage. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for everybody, it was. And look, we all had those movies. Even like for me, it was Animal House, which was made in the 70s, the late 70s. Mm-hmm. But that was such a great film and still holds up today. But again, I think if you showed people today, that they would just be super offended. And
what about Porky's?
In the 80s, we weren't. Yeah, Porky's. That's what I'm saying. Like you couldn't, if you put Porky's on today, people would flip out because the guys were peeping up on the girls, and which would be just
I think we're talking about today. The other one. I got that wrong. I'm sorry. My bad. It was Porky's you're talking about.
Yeah. But Porky's, and again, like, and even just humor in general, like, again, Airplane, we had really good comedies as well as like great romance films or action films. Like we came out of the action genre. Mm-hmm. We had Rambo and we had, Karate Kid and Jean Claude. And just think about that, like Karate Kid today, all these kids that are watching that Netflix Karate Kid is because of an 80s movie that still holds up.
Mm-hmm. And all the characters are still on this damn show.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you watched it, it's kind of crazy. I'm like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that person.
Well, and they're doing a great job of, obviously, that show's for us.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's for us. That show is not for, as much as they have younger kids on it, kind of taking the roles on of like the daughter and the kids that are all, studying, the show is still based around the two main characters that we grew up with. Yeah. Which is insane that it's so popular. Mm-hmm. However many years, I want to say that came out in maybe 84, maybe. Let's see.
I have no idea. But were you watching MTV when MTV came on and the first song that they played was Radio Killed the Video Star?
Video Killed the Radio Star.
Killed the Radio Star.
Yes.
Damn it, I thought I got that right too.
And I am right, 1984.
Okay, good. But do you remember that happening? Were you watching it then?
I don't think I saw the debut of it.
But, we waited for the countdown just so that we can watch it. We had our sodas and our snacks, and we're sitting in front of the TV and we're just waiting for it to come on. And I watched that moment, and I was trying to describe that to a 29-year-old, and it was so over their head. It was like, really?
Well, yeah, because now they just go, I'll just go on YouTube and type it in and see the video I want to see.
It was like a big deal. Or on TV. Yeah. Do you remember on TV? First, that's paid the channel. First, paid channel that I ever remember.
Yeah, then there was on TV, there was the Z channel. That was another cable that had movies.
Yeah.
That's all it had. It was just a movie channel, and then they would put on movies. MTV was a whole thing. It's funny today because, again, now everything's on your phone and it's in your hand. Mm-hmm. We would watch MTV for hours.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that was when they played music over and over and over again.
Yeah. And great because different genres.
Yeah.
It wasn't one genre playing at the same time. It was multiples, which I think it was great because it made people want to listen to different kinds of music. Mm-hmm. It's something missing today.
Especially in the 80s. Because you could listen to anything from like Dire Straits to, got that song is that stupid video still in my head. Mm-hmm. All the way to like Michael Jackson stuff. To Cyndi Lauper's. Yeah.
The first hip hop. We're the generation that remembers no hip hop. Think about that. We are the first generation of rap music.
Right.
That was publicly done. Obviously in the 70s, there was rap in New York in the underground.
The Sugar Hill Gang.
But the Sugar Hill Gang, and even that wasn't big. MTV with Run DMC and the Beastie Boys were the first like big rap stars that opened up the gates for hip hop. And of course, then, you know, obviously like hair metal and that was big at the time. There were so many genres. New wave, Duran Duran was on MTV, you know, once an hour.
Crew was always on.
Crew. So, and it was such a different generation. Obviously, it was the party and excess generation. It was about having fun all the time. Everything wasn't such a downer. It was, and even when the country wasn't, you know, great.
The economy was better.
The economy was better, but when things weren't the greatest, like 1980 was the hostage situation in Iran. Like that was a big deal. Although we came out of that, you know, with a little bit more love of country, obviously, and things were getting better financially. So the country started being more about having fun, and it wasn't such a downer that, and again, not that the 90s were such a downer, but like musically,
it was a downer.
Musically,
90s.
It was a downer in the 90s.
For sure.
It was so much fun in the 80s. It was, like I said, it was dance music.
Yeah. Even fashion, because I do hair. You know, back in the 80s, everybody had that big blonde, dyed blonde, curly, frizzy mess of a hairdo that cost everybody a shit ton of money, because there's not too many people that have hair like that from the get, right? So
right.
People's fashion was different. Like high-waisted jeans were a thing. Bulky items like big jackets with shoulder pads, and everything was overly done with layers, and like you wore like 2 or 3 pairs of socks at a time, you know, and with your leg warmers and all kinds of other shit. So even for fashion, it was a time of excess where people had, we had things and we didn't go without really in the 80s. There's a lot of drugs. There was a lot
everything was big though.
Yeah.
Big.
Oh yeah.
Big belts.
I could show you some pictures of my hair and you would be like, what the hell were you thinking?
Well, yeah. I bet that was everybody. Look at our yearbook.
My hair was wider than my shoulders, and I got shoulders.
Yeah.
I was looking at this picture the other day going, why did I think this was okay?
Well, because it was. It was okay. You didn't stand out then. You were like everyone else because it was just big. I mean, dudes had hair that big.
Yeah, I remember going to one of my mom's best friend's house, and there's 3 moms and 3 daughters, and they'd all start drinking a box of wine. The moms would, and they would line us up and they would do stuff to our hair. And I remember my hair was so long that when I put on my pants, my hair would get caught in the waistband, and they were going to perm it, and they decided what perm rods they were going to use. And by the time they were done with my hair was huge, but it only came up to my bra strap. Like I literally lost like 8 or 9 inches of length because of how big and tight this stinking perm was. Hilarious. Hilarious. And then my mom decided to bleach it because my hair is brown. So she bleached it and it looked like clear rice noodles. She overprocessed the shit out of my hair.
Oh man.
But back in the 80s you could totally wear it, like, and nobody waxed their eyebrows then, which is kind of weird.
Big eyebrows.
And you're allowed to have like hair around your genital area, which is not a thing to do these days.
Oh yeah. I remember there was a girl who went to high school with us named Stacy, and you probably know who she is. She had big eyebrows, but it was one of, you know, in that time we didn't know any better. She had great eyebrows. It was one of those things where you're just like, oh yeah, like, and you look at old pictures and I wonder, it's funny. I don't think she lives in the state anymore, but, I'd wonder, like, I really wonder what a lot of these people look like just to see, you know.
Yeah.
Because it was a different time. And you're right. It was big hair and Guess jeans.
Everything.
Guess was huge.
People wore more than one watch. Like, what the hell was that all about?
Oh, yeah. Swatch.
Yeah, remember
Swatch
that?
watches.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Swatches. Swatch, right? Is that
Swatch.
That's what, Swatch. Yeah. That was a thing. Yeah, that was huge too. That was another like massively big thing.
Yeah. And one of my friends was asking like what posters I had on my wall, like who did it for me. And it was like George Michael back when everybody thought that he was straight. And like Ralph Macchio.
No, actually no one thought he was straight, but
Matt Dillon. I did.
No, we didn't.
Okay. We'll just go on with that. But all those people like Rob Lowe and I don't know, that just all of them, like all the posters. We used to have posters everywhere, and I still don't understand what the hell that was all about.
I mean, yeah, my whole room was full of, definitely was full of posters. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would probably say for me, it was like Heather Thomas from Fall Guy, Heather Locklear. Yeah, I think that was the bigger ones for me. So,
and we can't forget the popular colors that were all fluorescent. They were all fluorescent.
Yeah. And it's funny though, because I think that didn't that come back?
Oh, a couple times for sure.
Yeah.
But that was also the time when nail salons started. I remember being 16 when nail shops came into the area. We never had nail shops around here. Everybody just cut their own nails, did whatever they were going to do, painted them, whatever. But when I was 16, I was working, started getting my nails done. I still to this day have my nails done every couple of weeks. And that started literally when the salon started to come into the valley here. I started getting my nails done and never went back.
Yeah, it's funny too, because I remember like Lee press-on nails.
Yeah, I didn't need those because I had the real ones.
No, but that was like a big thing.
Yeah.
Like, there'd be commercials and
they were long. Remember, like long and hot pink or red.
Oh yeah.
My nails were so stinking long. I can't believe I wore them like that.
I mean, and again, like if you want to go down like the funny things of the 80s, like Chia Pets. Like the funny things, like obviously I think the 60s had the pet rock, which man, whoever came up with that was fucking brilliant. Just let's put rocks in a box and sell it to people.
Right.
But, we had like Chia Pet, and you know what? I think it was another thing that I think it was at the end of the 80s. I'd have to look it up for sure. But like QVC, like the first channel on cable that sold things. That was like, I remember that being, I mean, I guess it's still pretty big. It's still a thing, but obviously not on the level that it was in the 80s. It was kind of like the first, I don't want to say Amazon because that's not what it was, but like you could go on and they'd show you the product and they'd go, hey, we have 400 of these and you have this amount of minutes to buy it. And it was huge. It was huge to me.
I was at, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish your thought.
No. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Who knows what I was going to say.
Oh, so I went to Hobby Lobby the other day and I almost bought a spirograph.
Oh, spirograph. Spirograph was cool. The spirograph. And again, something that no one of the new generation would have any clue what a
I don't know. They're still selling them. My niece had to pull me away. She's like, Thea, you're buying too many things already. Like, don't get the spirograph.
Spirograph was cool. It was like you put the little round thing in, you put your pencil in, and you make shapes in it. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Etch-a-Sketch.
Yes.
I think the Etch-a-Sketch was probably the late 70s though, but obviously that was it.
Or a barrel of monkeys.
A barrel of monkeys. What was the ones that you put in the water? Something monkeys. You would put them in water and they'd grow. Sea monkeys. I think that's also from like the 50s or 60s though. But I remember like that being like the funny thing. It's like, oh, this. And I think with fashion, you kind of hit it on the head though. Fashion was I think it was because, coming out of the 70s where it was more like flannels and stoners and kind of
rockers.
But I mean, for normal people, it was more like that, just peace and like free love. And it was like kind of the ending of that generation through the 60s and the 70s with like more big collars and horrible paisley prints. I have pictures of me and my brother that, man, it's like I would have beat my parents, but it was in. Like
I could one-on-one you with those pictures too of stupid shit my mom put me in. Yeah.
Me and we would do like the J.C. Penney and Sears, like sitting back to each other, and my brother would be in this horrible paisley shirt, and then I'd have a blue one with paisleys all over it. Horrible.
Do you remember Granimals?
Granimals, yeah, that was like wasn't that more like pajamas?
The monkeys on the pants to the monkey on the shirt.
Yeah.
It taught you how to like match.
What was the underoos? The ones that had that was like the first time I remember there being like superheroes on pajamas or undergarments, which was kind of funny. And then they even got smart for like as you got a little older, they had like a sexier version of the underoo for girls with like and like the funny thing is you start talking about like where you would grow your hair. What about like cuts of bikinis or cuts of bathing suits? Like they were all really high and they were, you had a full butt, but they were like, they would go way high on your, on your waistline or high on the sides, and they'd show all your legs. It's when you look back on it, I think that's sort of back now as well with more of a 2000s version of that.
Yeah. It's a high cut.
Yeah. Like I remember those type of things where, like we'd go to the beach in the 80s. We'd go to Zuma. We would all get in the back of someone's pickup truck and lay down on the freeway.
I remember doing that.
To get to the beach so we could hang out for hours at a time. And with no money, like we had no money. We would pitch in whatever change we had to get gas with the one person who had a car or a truck. We'd get on the 101 and drive to Zuma, like literally laying down with no seatbelt on and get there. And, we are lucky that nothing crazy happened or we didn't die in a car accident because, we did crazy shit. I used to get on the back. I had a friend of mine who had a big ass station wagon. And if you don't know what a station wagon is because you're too young, look it up. It looks like a fucking boat. Like they were monstrously huge. Well, we had a friend, me and my friend Rick and a couple other guys would get on the back and hold on on the outside and drive down the road. No, on the back, like holding on with our feet on the bumper. Just dumb shit.
Yeah, but we also were the generation that didn't have car seats so early. Like,
oh yeah, well, we didn't wear helmets on bikes.
No,
or skateboards. Oh. I have scars from wrecking on skateboards to this day on my elbows. So, but I thought it was funny. Like we didn't go crazy though. We weren't doing 50 down the street, but we were still riding on the back of a car because we thought it would be funny. But looking back on it, these were great times of doing fun things. Like we've talked about it on the podcast before, how we would go out in, mostly in the summertime. We'd wake up at whatever time. Let's, if we're being somewhat nice, we'll say 10 o'clock in the morning. And we would come home at whatever the curfew was. If you were lucky, it was 10, 10:30, maybe 11. And that had to be on a special occasion. But we would be out for 12 hours at a time with no supervision, just grab your skateboard or get in someone else's car, drive to whatever. No cell phones to be
skate
found.
Around the school.
Yeah, but we couldn't be found. No one knew where the hell we were at. We were just out doing shit on bicycles or boards or doing this, where we had zero way of getting hold of us. And at the end of the day, it didn't matter because our parents were at work.
Yeah, they did. They knew how to get a hold of us. They whistled.
No, but let's say, during the day, like when your dad was at work, like my dad was at work, he was a single dad. He was home. I was home alone from 7 o'clock in the morning to 4 in the afternoon every single day. So there was no way to get a hold of me. And the only way I could get a hold of him is like calling 8 different channels because he worked out in the field. They had to call him on a radio. He was in a truck. So I ended up breaking my wrist doing some dumb shit, and they literally had to get a hold of him through horrible channels. And I got in a lot of trouble for that because I was doing something I shouldn't have done.
What were you doing?
I went and visited my old elementary school when we had a half day, and my dad told me, don't you dare go there. And I did anyway, and I broke my wrist. Yeah. So needless to say, that didn't
do that. You would get on campus.
Oh yeah. Oh, we could go back to our junior high whenever we wanted. Walk right on campus, and go see all our old friends and or old teachers. Yeah, you couldn't do that to save your life now. Like, there's no way.
No.
You couldn't. There's no way the only way I could see you visiting old teachers now is on a back to school night. Assuming they were alive. I'm sure none of our teachers are working, or
I hope none of them are
dead,
teaching. God bless them.
Or they're and none of them are teaching. Even the young ones are.
When my daughter was in high school, she went to the same high school that I did, and there were teachers there that were my teachers, and I actually went and spoke to them, and that was kind of weird, though. I was like, wow, these years later, and they're still there.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to remember, though, we looked at it that way from the standpoint of like, wow, they're still there, but this was their life. I mean, that was their job.
They weren't that much older than we were when they started. So
yeah. I mean, some of them obviously, like, probably 10 years, like 10, 12 years. So yeah, it would be simple to be in that, where you're just kind of like,
but being the parent, it was bizarre. It just was like, I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, I'm sure.
They're still
I think,
there?
Going to a couple of my kids' places, obviously he went to school in another city, but it was interesting because I was a younger parent to some of his friends had older parents, and I was, I would take him to concerts and we'd do stuff all the time. And obviously for a while I had really long hair, and I would go into these places and people would ask my kid, like, that's your dad? And he's like, yeah. And they're like, oh, he has long hair and earrings and this and that. And he's like, and my kid would be like, yeah, whatever. Like, what's the big deal? But then I would see other parents and I'd go, oh, that was the big deal. Because, here I am, I got long hair and tattoos, and I didn't look like the rest of the people. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting. I remember
not wanting to meet parents because I had my lip pierced. And I was like, oh, you don't want me to be the impression that they have. So let's have your dad meet them instead, or
right.
Well, I'll meet them after you come over. Because
I was kind of in a weird thing like that because I didn't care. I think that was part of my thing. I was just like, whatever. Like,
I did. I felt judged because my daughter's adopted. So we were always at therapists or in court or wherever we were. We had to prove that we were good people. So raising her, I always felt like we were being judged and watched, and just somebody was waiting for us to mess up. So for me, it was very different. I think it would have been different had I had her, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I know where you're coming from, because look, being judged is being judged regardless of how you look at it, whether they're yours or not. I just think that it's the attitude of saying, like, for me at the time, it was more like, this is me. And, and obviously I'm going to go places and people are going to see me. I felt really weird where we lived, because in Camarillo, I kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. I mean, there wasn't a lot of long haired dudes, and at least not where I lived. And I always thought that, like, the neighbors looked at me really weird, but I was also the one that said, no, whatever. So, I think maybe because of the 80s, there were so many different kinds of people when we were young. Like, yeah, there were so many groups, on a campus, mostly in high school. Junior high was a little more open, I think, for me, where there were cliques and there were popular kids. But then you hit high school, and then there was jocks and stoners and goth kids, and the Hispanic people would be together and the black people would be together. And it was all these different, it was very much segregated, but because they wanted to be segregated,
but we all coexisted.
But the metal dudes were they wanted to hang out with metal people because that's who they, resonated with. And the same with goth people. Goth people didn't intertwine with anyone. They had their own little clique. And then there was the ones who meshed in between, like cheerleaders, like us, where we knew everybody. But I think communicators helped that, which was a class that we had where you literally learned how to talk or communicate with other people. And we did have cheerleaders and jocks, and there was kind of everyone in that class where, looking back on that, again, I used to say it all the time, but that probably one of the best classes we ever had. And I think that class would be a great thing today to have, where you just go in and talk, and it's okay to talk, and it's okay to be different, because all of us were different. There wasn't a lot of
different. Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of the same people in that class. And
no, that's what they wanted, a cross section of as many different types of kids that they could get, so that they could break barriers of race and color and
social construct.
Yeah, exactly.
Being from different, because we had people bust into where our school was. Mm-hmm. So we had different we
people. We had inner city kids, and then we had valley kids.
So we definitely had these different
and we were taught tolerance, where I don't think tolerance is being taught right now.
No, probably not. I think that, we understood that people were different, and at least from one point of view, you could go okay, they're just different. But we didn't have, there wasn't something so, we didn't care about politics then. Mm-mm. We didn't care about the politics of our friends. In high school, we didn't care who the president was, and you didn't care who this was, or because the 80s was more free of just we're here to have fun. We're going to do what we could to not exist in that bubble. I think now everything's political.
It is.
And in high school, people are not living that high school life. And don't get me wrong, I think it's important to learn all these things. You should learn about the government, and you should learn about things, so when you're ready to get out, you're a functioning member of society. But you also have to live a little bit, and it's okay to have friends who aren't like you. And I think that that's really helped, where growing up in the 80s, where you did have friends that were outside the boundaries of what or who you were.
Mm-hmm. And now, the ones that I still have today from that are all so incredibly different.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I bet you a lot of us today wouldn't get along with each other.
I don't know.
I think on a larger level, because of the social political things that are going on in this country. Now, if you go in and say, well, I agree with this, a bunch of people would shun you. And then another bunch would come over, and that might not even have been your friends then, and be like, well, I believe what you do. And, now it's a very weird time in life where, again, natural segregation. We segregate ourselves now with the people that we believe in or have the same topics that we agree with. It's very odd, and I think it's very hurtful. We're running into a different place where in the 80s, man, I don't remember that. I don't even remember my dad talking about politics a lot. It just wasn't a big deal. I mean, I know we had the Cold War with Russia, and we came out of some bad things, and I'm sure politics were big then with our parents. I just don't remember it as much.
I don't remember my parents really talking about it at all.
I was worried about GI Joes and playing with my friends and going down to the baseball field and playing over the line. And, just trying to live, whatever it was that I thought was right. Mostly summertime. And then school, it was, look, as much as we had to learn things, and I think we did, it was still a social thing. Like, we learned how to talk with people and not be on a phone all the time. And if we were,
God, I'm so glad we didn't have those phones. If my mom saw half the shit we did.
Oh yeah. Well, and if we were on phones, it was stuck to a cord in our room, talking under the,
or in the kitchen. You couldn't stretch it to the room.
Well, I had a cordless phone. So like
you were lucky.
Oh yeah. And I'd be like under the covers at night trying to talk to somebody like way too late. Like, oh yeah, I gotta be quiet. In the apartment I lived in, the walls were paper thin.
Right.
Just like my dad he knew what I was doing. He wasn't stupid. So but we had a different time in the 80s. And I think, again, we found funny, and we looked at the world differently, mostly as growing up in it. And again, I can't judge for people who were 20, 25, 30 during the 80s. But I'm going to assume there was a lot of good times. Because like you said, there's lots of drugs going on that didn't kill you. There was lots of parties. There was like the Sunset Strip. I think of the Sunset Strip during the 80s. And that's when people would go down to Hollywood and party and go see bands and go to clubs. And I know that kept going throughout the 90s, but go to Hollywood now. Hollywood now is so nothing like it was in the 80s. It was.
And everybody dressed like either
huge.
Don Johnson or.
Oh, yeah.
Or one of the. What were you going to say?
Yeah, or like rock bands.
What was that? Square Pegs.
Square Pegs. Yeah. Square Pegs was the quintessential 80s thing. If you look at that, that's how
people dress.
Everyone dressed. Yeah. Like, you had the kids at school that tried to be preppy, big collars up, and then you'd have
eyes on lacrosse.
Yeah, exactly. And then every athlete, you knew who the athletes were because they walked around like athletes and big chested, and then wore their jerseys on Fridays, and which I'm sure everything goes like that again today. Except from what I understand, again, going through my kid, like it's different though. Jocks can like comic books and be into everything. Like everything's kind of crossed over as well. Like nothing's taboo. Like when I didn't tell people I was into comic books when I was in high school because I'd have got shunned. I'd have been like, why are you watching? What are you doing that for? That's stupid. Yeah. It kept me out of a lot of trouble, but I believe that, it was just, I would say better, we, our 20s, obviously we're in the 90s, and it was, the early 90s were good. Excuse me. But it got dark quick. And I think, obviously the years of excess had to end because they just did. But I think we had a fun, great time period of growing up. It was still innocent to where we didn't know all the bad things that were going on, but we still had fun and could do all these things without the bad things of like violence. There were no like really bad shootouts at school, or the gang problem wasn't monstrous yet, at least where we lived. Yeah. It was still a safe place to grow up where we did. And good people. Like I said, I knew people in high school that were gangsters, like straight up gangsters, the people who'd been stabbed and, shot at people and were in gangs. I had a guy who was in my home ec class who literally was a gangster, but sat next to me and we baked apple pie together. Like there was no issues. There was no I don't know. And again, like maybe I'm living in a different universe, but I would say that race relations then was way better.
Well, we were taught tolerance. That was what that whole class was about. We were taught how to treat people as people and not what they had, not what they did, not who they were, but like how they were with us. Like our interaction is what we judged. And it's not like that anymore.
Right. But I think just in general it was. And I mean, on the outside world, like, I just think it was just better then, at least in my crazy head. But
it was when
like
people
I said,
were allowed to talk and people just shut up and didn't say anything if they didn't agree.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Maybe that's it, because
I let it happen. Just didn't.
I had friends of every race, and it was no one said anything. It wasn't like, and maybe that's just, again, I could be living through a small lens, but we lived in Southern California.
Up in a cool place, though. California, growing up in the 80s, we were just taught differently, and we were allowed to be young and kind of wild and do our thing. And I don't think kids are allowed to do that anymore. Everything's so micromanaged.
And they don't go out anyway. Everything's on a phone.
Again, those stupid phones. I'm so grateful we didn't have those. Man, my mom.
We would have been in a lot of trouble. Lots of trouble. Well, not only that.
And that was on a good day.
We would have been in trouble anyway, because we all went places we shouldn't have. They would have been able to track us. Like, we wouldn't have been able to do anything. We had a very long chains. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I remember I had a lunch pass, so I could leave school and go get lunch, which didn't make sense. It wasn't even 40 minutes we were allowed for lunch. But anyway, I had a pass to get out, and my brother didn't because he wasn't old enough for one. And my boyfriend at the time didn't because his parents wouldn't come and sign up. And I don't remember how many people I had in the trunk of my car. And I got in a car accident because a teacher was trying to get out, and she just was pissed off and ran right into me because I was in the wrong parking lot. But I had all these kids in the trunk of my car, and I had to go around the corner and down the street to the yogurt place that we were all going to go and get yogurt just to let him out of the car. Because if I let him out at school, I would have been in a lot of trouble.
Right. Well, just imagine you got in a car accident with people in the trunk.
Yeah, it was a fender bender. It wasn't really that bad. Yeah. We actually took a nail and like pushed in the rubber on the bumper, and then added gum to it, so kind of stuck, so that if my mom was going to see it, she'd see it like way after the fact. It could have been anybody.
Right.
So yeah, that's what we did, and I got away with that. I don't know how, because my brother was in the trunk, and I got away with it. So good times.
I think it's crazy too that I think, and I know they still exist on some level, but I think the generation this generation is missing out on drive-in theaters.
Oh, I miss those so much.
Drive-ins were so fun. We would go to Winnetka. Mm-hmm. We'd pile as many people in a car as we could. Because then it was by the carload. It was like however many people you could get in there. And and again, my friend had a boat. He had a big old station wagon, and we'd have like 9 people in there, 10 people sitting on top of each other. Mm-hmm. Everyone would get out. We'd have folding chairs and hang out and watch a double feature, which doesn't exist anymore. Just good times. And again, maybe it was just simpler. And again, I think most people would probably say their youth was simple, but man, ours was so good. Growing up in the 80s was just a cool thing of big hair and fun music and great times. At least for me, I think that we grew up in probably the last fun era of it being just, and a lot of new things. Like, just imagine we had the microwave. No one had a microwave.
Yeah.
Like, that was a new thing. The cordless phone. Mm-hmm. And I remember we
used to have beepers, pagers.
Yeah, but that was late 80s.
Yeah.
Like early 90s. I know they had them.
Now these kids have phones and tablets, and their
full blown
cameras are on their phones, and They could talk to people. Oh my God, I remember having to send snail mail to my friends in El Paso. It took days. And it took days to get anything back. And it was so annoying. And you couldn't call everybody that was out of state because you had to pay more for it. You had to pay for every minute of every call. So you could only call like after a certain time or on the weekends. And so waiting to correspond with somebody you wanted to see was hard sometimes.
Well,
it wasn't like, let me just text them. And
again, long distance. Like now you call
when long
anywhere.
Distance was long.
Yeah. You call anyone now in any state, anywhere, and it's the same cost. Then it was by the minute. And at one point, like I had a girlfriend here that ended up moving to New York. So, it's trying to stay in touch with somebody in New York. My dad was like, you need to get the hell off the phone because it's costing a fortune. So it's just different. But those were like good times. Like, and again, the same girl at the time, like I found old pictures and they're locked up in a shed outside, but like big hair. Like I had like, she had big hair and I had like a really bad mullet. Like it was before I could grow all my hair out.
Yeah.
Like it was just a different time but fun. Like I traveled to New York in 1988, which was just an adventure for a kid who'd really never left Southern California, with the exception of going to Iowa. So you go, we went to this other time. And it's funny because looking back, her parents rented a house in Southampton, which if you know where the Hamptons are. I
do.
Yeah, it was fucking amazing. And like, I remember there was this huge cemetery across the street. And, here in California, we don't have huge headstones. Back there, they have like 8-foot headstones.
Yes.
Yeah, no, but they're like 8 feet, like big, huge, monstrous headstones. Yes. So I remember going back there and just being like, this is so different. And I remember going back and being the California kid and it was just a whole nother thing on top of that. But
I'd hear when I would go even to El Paso, wait, you're from California? Yeah. What does that even mean? Yeah. From California.
I went back to visit my mom. My mom lived in Iowa at the time when we graduated. So right after I graduated in 89, I flew back the summer of 89. And
I remember you going back.
And the same thing, like I was like a fucking rock star. It was like my mom lived in a town that had like 1,000 people in it.
And did you understand where they were coming from? Because I was like, what the hell's their problem?
No, not really.
I didn't.
But then I got it after a little while where I remember, because I knew every girl in that town, and that's not me trying to pump up my ego. I was just a kid from California, and I knew I was going back there, so I laid out every single day in like for weeks in baby oil. And when I went back there, I was brown, like golden brown. Mm-hmm. So, and everyone in Iowa was butt ass white, like they were white. Mm-hmm. So when I went back there, and my mom told everyone I was coming. So like people would walk up. I had every girl in the town. Like I would sit on the porch and they were like, there must have been 12 or 13 girls that were within my age range.
Damn.
And they were like, do you live near the beach? Do you near Hollywood? Do you see any stars? Is it warm all the time? Just being, blistered with all these questions about California. And for me, I was just like, it's California. Like, I grew up there. Like, yeah, I'm like, I don't know. I'm an hour from the beach.
We don't walk around amongst movie stars every day.
Yeah. Well, that was the other thing I kind of had to tell them. I go, that's not reality. Like you go to Hollywood, you don't see people like that.
You do sometimes. I mean,
you do, but
you run into people.
The reality was, they think of television and I'm like, nah, it's not like that. But yeah, those were good times. And like, man, just to go back and relive those would be fun. Cause I think the 80s were a fun time. And I think some people have missed out if they didn't grow up in the 80s.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's good times.
I don't know if I'd want to relive having to go through school again, but although
you just want to take the good stuff.
but here's the thing, knowing how school got, I would probably still go back and relive those years. Cause they were still fun times and good people. I would probably live them differently if I could go back knowing what I know now.
Oh God.
Be scary.
I'd be doing things differently.
Yeah, I would be a terror. I would, because I realized that some of those girls that were like cheerleaders and everything, they were good folks. Like, you know, we put them on a pedestal because they were popular, but some of those people were really, really good people. Like, and you know, you go to the 10-year reunion, and you realize that, oh, this guy's cool and this girl was really cool, and then people we shunned or ignored because we didn't think they liked us in school ended up like, oh yeah, I really liked you in school. It's like, didn't you tell me that? You were
hard to get to know, so I can imagine people saying that about you.
Yeah, it's really weird though, because I heard like people later on were like, oh, you're a good hugger, and like we would always hug you, and I was like,
how's communicators?
Yeah, but outside of there, like people that weren't in that class that were like, oh yeah, I was like, oh yeah, you should have said something then. I probably would have got laid a lot more. Go figure. Well, anything else you got to say for our first of We Grew Up in the 80s show and how we enjoyed it?
I don't know. I just kind of feel blessed. We grew up in a time where you could get away with shit, had enough time to hang yourself doing it, and laugh the whole time. It's kind of fun.
And could clean up the mess before the parents would get home.
Oh man, like you wouldn't believe. My mom used to say, I know when you guys have parties because you clean the house better. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah. Although I will say one last story before we go. Me and my best friend had a party. It was in 88. So we were in 11th grade. His parents and everyone left to go to Texas and left me and him at his house alone. So we decided to have a party. We had someone whose older brother could get beer. I didn't drink, and I didn't drink until I was way later. But I was the one who had to make sure everything went down and everything was cool. Well, we got a keg. Well, we didn't think that the keg was going to bleed. We didn't know. We never had a keg before. So we pumped it full of ice and we put it in the living room. Well, it bled and bled and bled because it was, you know, the ice was melting. So the water was getting everywhere. Well, the next morning, his parents were going to come home that day. So that the morning of they were coming home, it was like his carpet was soaking wet. And I mean, soaking wet we were wringing it out like with like a mop and a squeegee to try to get it out the back of the door. Thank goodness it was near the slider. Anyway, we did our best, and I was like, dude, I got to go home. My dad, blah, blah, blah. He's like, all right. This guy was so smart. He cleaned up the house, and he cleaned it up good, but nothing too crazy. But what he did, because he couldn't get that part dry, he took the mop, the mop bucket that had cleaning fluid in it and dumped more of it on that same spot, squeegeed the shit out of it, and said he dropped the mop bucket on the way out the door because he was mopping the floor, and he got away with it. And he got away with it for like 25 years. And me, him, and his mom were hanging out one time and told her the story. And she was like, son of a bitch. And I was like, yeah, we locked up all their shit. And his parents' room had a lock on it. We took everything of value and locked it in the fucking room so no one could get in there, so nothing would break. We were pretty smart. I mean, they were doing crazy shit. They were playing quarters on his table. Like, it was a crazy time. Mm-hmm. And here I am walking around with orange juice and pineapple juice in a cup. Walking around.
Because you didn't drink then.
I didn't drink, so I was the only sober one in probably the whole place. Good times, yeah, crazy. All right, well, you know, we have some social medias that you can go follow on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Soon to be a YouTube page. I'm working on it. You can listen to this show on Apple and Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Google, pretty much anywhere you can hear podcasts. We had somebody in England and India, so we must be hitting again for something. Maybe we had a ban or something in India because we dried up there, but maybe it's, you know, we say some crazy shit, so maybe we didn't get past the censors in another country. But yeah, growing up in the 80s, if you can watch old movies from the 80s, pick them up whenever you can. They might not hold up totally, but I think they were a better generation, And man, the humor was great, and we got to laugh. And just like this show today, we had a little giggles. So until next week, this is an opinion show, so don't get it twisted. Keep coming back. Have some fun. We'll see you next Wednesday. And Tina, it's always good to see you. And look, I'm getting you off our podcast right on time.
Thank you, darling.
Not a problem. We'll see you next week.
Bye.